Edgewood College is welcoming internationally recognized poet Richard Blanco to Madison this week as its visiting fellow.
Blanco read his poem "One Today" at President Obama's second inauguration. Richard Blanco is the 5th inaugural poet in United States history, joining the ranks of such important storytellers as Robert Frost and Maya Angelou. Blanco is the son of Cuban exiles and grew up in Miami, Florida.
He is the first Latino, openly gay person and immigrant to hold the title of inaugural poet. And Richard Blanco is here. Welcome to Live at 4 and to Madison. Quite an honor.
Yes, certainly.
What went through your mind when you found out this was going to happen?
Well, the first thing was I thought it was a friend playing a prank on me, to be honest with you. And the second emotion, which kind of surprised me, was this sense of overwhelming gratitude for my parents and my grandparents and their story of, it's kind of a typical immigrant sort of story of following the American dream, and how that very special moment was really possible only because of them and their sacrifices and hard work. And then, of course, the sheer terror set in of, like, I have to write a poem in a week, or 3 poems in 3 weeks, and getting right to work. Yeah.
Well, an inaugural poet, as the name implies, is a poet who recites poetry at an inauguration.
Correct, yeah.
As we said in the introduction, you're in amazing company there. There's only been 5 in history. So
yes.
How were you selected for this?
It's still a mystery. I have my romantic notions of the president absorbed in my poems in the Oval Office and canceling his meetings or whatnot. And it's still sort of a mystery that I think we've danced around. But I think if I had to say, I think part of it, if you look at our president's sort of biography, and compared to my biography in terms of asking those questions of what is home, what is my place at the American table, that sense of what is the American dream, am I part of that narrative? I think I could see him sort of connecting as in his own sort of biographical life, asking some of those same questions that I've asked in my poetry, and I think that's the connection where we meet emotionally. Yeah.
Your parents are Cuban exiles, as we mentioned. You grew up in Miami.
Yes.
There's so much debate going on right now about immigration and Cuba and all that. What's your take on it?
Well, I think that, largely I think it's still a big question mark in everybody's mind. I think certainly things have shifted, the needle has shifted, and I think everybody's sort of trying to readjust. I know I'm trying to readjust because in some ways, whatever your opinion was, it sort of was a stalemate, so it was kind of a...
It didn't matter?
It didn't matter in a way because nobody really thought anything was going to happen. So as we see these developments, we're cautiously sort of, those that are for are sort of cautiously waiting, well, let's see what this really means. Those who are against sort of dig their heels deeper, I think, into the ground. But I think I'm hopeful. I've been to Cuba, of course, and there's a lot of hope on the streets of Cuba as well. As I saw people sort of taking a different attitude about what the possibilities are at hand, but very cautious as well, very cautious.
Well, speaking of, let's share some of your work with our viewers. You had a great honor as the American flag was raised over the embassy in Havana. Let's take a look.
The sea doesn't matter. What matters is this. We all belong to the sea between us. All of us. Once and still the same child who marvels over starfish, listens to hollow shells, sculpts dreams into impossible castles. My cousin...
What beautiful words those are. That must have been so emotional for you to read that in Cuba.
Yeah, it was in some ways, very different ways, but in some ways it was much more emotionally entrenched than even the inauguration, which is because I never really thought this could happen in my lifetime. So, and to see that moment, the possibility of hope, again, this sort of the budding of just this hope of real changes in Cuba, a new understanding of each other, and also very much in terms of my parents. And I always have their pain and their longing for Cuba in my heart. And so in some ways, I feel like if I could be part of the changes that are meaningful, that was just a great thing to give back to my mother, especially, who still is alive.
Your poetry is not traditional in the sense of rhyming words. It's more storytelling. But how would you describe your art?
Sure. I mean, the term for it is kind of narrative poetry. Really, it's very entrenched in biography and autobiography, and it is very story-like. And accessible is another great word that we like to use. But I'm going to put on a professorial hat here for a moment. But there seems to be sometimes when people say, "Oh, the poetry is accessible," something can be very accessible and very complex, right?
Yes.
And so that's what I strive for, is to give you that sort of distilled, accessible poetry, but still that makes you think in sort of in ways that you haven't thought. And part of those challenges with a poem like writing for something so complex is the relations between the United States and Cuba and all the history between us and the exile community, you know, to bring all those nuances in a way that maybe we can understand something different.
And what are you doing in Madison?
I'm part of the Woodrow Wilson Fellowship Program that brings different scholars and artists to various colleges, and I'm spending the whole week here at Edgewood College on all sorts of classes, and from sociology to ethnic studies, and just sort of being their guest and being, you know, fussed over. And that's great, and really connecting with the students, which are just lovely. Very, very present students, I've found. And we've been having sort of just great conversations and reading poetry and whatnot.
That's wonderful.
What a pleasure it is to meet you. And congratulations on everything.
Thank you. My pleasure.
Continued success.
Thank you.
Welcome to Madison. Great to meet you, Richard.
Good to be here.
We'll be right back.